Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hogstye. It is your host, Alex. I've got Dave and I've got Steve here. So we got our full crew. It is I'll be honest, guys, I'm just going to say it. I didn't even really want to do the show because it's like, do we really want to talk about the ass kicking this team just got? Or do we want to talk about the ass kicking that this team's going to get in a few days? It's just a lot of who's kicking our ass now.
Well, you got to thank me then, because you don't have to talk about it twice. You can only have to do it once.
Yes, it's like a Band-Aid now. It's still a Band-Aid you're ripping off in an hour, but it's like more like a Band-Aid this time.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it's the Band-Aid you're ripping off. It's not the Band-Aid that's protecting you from anything.
Right.
It's like drinking a warm cup of water for me.
Yes.
Yes.
You are the most Ned Flanders person in the world, aren't you?
I was really referring to the fact that the team neither gets me excited nor irritates me anymore.
Oh, okay. The warm cup of water thing just sounds very Ned Flandersy. Before we really talk about the team,
I think I'm way more obnoxious than Ned Flanders. Give me a little credit.
Yes. Okay. Speaking of obnoxious, one of our writers and a longtime friend of yours and mine, Steve, no one from Tampa is what he goes by. We're not going to use his real name because he likes to use his pseudonym. He's been writing for our blog for what, 2 years now, something like that. Yeah. And he was a longtime commenter in the cesspool that is our comment section, and followed us over there from the post where you and I were, knew him from there. He got in a Twitter beef apparently with Tom Lavero over the weekend, and it's the silliest thing. Lavero was, ripping on the team for having low attendance. Tampa said, Lavero's negative, blah, 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 blah. Lavero is the big fish in this, and one of the oldest rules I've ever learned from being, on the outside cusp of entertainment is don't punch down when you're the big fish. Lavero spent a good 5 minutes on the Kevin Sheehan podcast complaining about no one from Tampa.
Now, what did he say exactly, though? That's what I want to know. I didn't know.
No one from Tampa, basically, I don't have the exact quote, but he said Tom Lavero's always negative about the team. He looks for any opportunity to bash because of Dan Snyder, and he looks for any opportunity to bash the team.
So that was the substance of it.
That was the substance of what Tampa said. And then they went back and forth 2 or 3 times.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Okay. Because no one texted me about this
on
today,
a podcast,
and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about.
Right. Of course, Tampa loves it. He thinks this is his big shot, right? Like this is going to be his one shot.
It's his moment. His moment at fame. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's like me with the stupid RFK Stadium thing, But that was me getting on TV. Tampa's not getting on TV.
So now, I've not listened to 1 second of Tom Lavero, and I've not read one word he's written. Is the man negative?
No question, he's Mr. Negative.
Yeah. The one thing that I've grown accustomed to with Tom Lavero is that, one, he definitely has something against Dan Snyder and an organization. And let's be honest, we all have something against. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it's no sugarcoating on that. But I think the biggest problem that the fans have with him is that he doesn't learn or doesn't know how to separate the front office aspect and the organization, everything that Dan Snyder touches, and can't look on the field on what some of the things that are positive happens and some of the things that go on. Because let's be honest, for better or worse, and no matter what side you are with Jason Wright and Ron Rivera and what they've done as organization, this organization today, front office makeup, the workplace, everything about it in terms of that side of it has improved. But he still harps on, well, you got Dan Snyder, which is not wrong. Dan Snyder's still there. He's still leading the way, and until you cut the head off the snake, he's always going to be around to.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Dave, I mean, again, I haven't read or heard any of this, but I agree with Lavaro in terms of what you said so far. Dan Snyder is a cancer, and it won't matter unless you cut the head off the snake, to use that analogy. And I don't know what the front office is like. Just because Jason Wright smiles, and is charismatic doesn't mean anything. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. I certainly hope it's better. But I kind of agree
imagine it getting much worse.
Right.
Well, yeah, granted. I mean, all they need is a flat out rape charge, and they've completed the trifecta in there. And that hasn't happened. Just stop for everybody listening. But I don't know if I disagree with Tom Lavaro from what you said.
Well, see, I think right now it's just, I mean, you're not wrong with all that, and I think the three of us can agree with all of that anyways involving Dan Snyder. But he carries a lot of personal issues because back when ESPN 980 was owned by the Snyder, yeah, right. It
was Red Zone Entertainment, which was Snyder.
Yeah, right. And him and Kevin Sheehan had a show in the afternoon together. And there was a lot of that show was dictated on the fact that you couldn't say anything negative about the team. You're going to have the guests on we want you to have. Basically, they staged everything that they want to have done. They couldn't be objective on anything.
Sure. Larry Michael ran the radio station, basically.
Right.
As another part of their propaganda machine, which, I guess is their right. They own it. But
right. Yeah. And it's the same beat that Jason Reed had with them for years, because he was supposed to have a morning show, some sort of like a locker room show, whatever, in the morning. And he was all geared to have that show and it was supposed to be like that weekend prior to that Monday was supposed to start. All of a sudden his show was canceled before he had a chance to start, and he was never given a reason why.
Well, they lasted for 2 or 3 months. And we know this very well because part of the reason we started this show was we said Jason Reed's show is so bad, a bunch of amateurs could get on and do a podcast that sounds better.
Oh, I thought it never made the air. My bad. Okay.
No, it made the air. Who was the other guy, Alex? There was.
It was some comedian. I don't remember his name. He blocked us right away.
Or something. Yeah, they found out. We
were making a joke about it at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And they found out, and we got blocked by whoever that comedian was. But the entire origination of this show was that we can do a better job than Jason Reed and that other guy with no training, no thought, any preparation whatsoever, and we were right.
Yes.
And you guys nailed it.
We survived. I mean, it helps that we have no infrastructure and no one to tell us we're fired. But
that's true. That's true. But I would argue our show is pretty good, though.
Yeah, our show's good. Yeah.
So look, I mean, to me, it's not exactly a secret that I have been relentlessly negative. Right. To the point where it's ruined my fandom, and I've been over that.
You are probably as negative as Tom Lavaro,
but you're far more objective with your negativity, though. That's what I was
getting at. I think it's totally fair if you're going to be objective. It's totally fair. Now, if this Lavaro guy is going to bring in his personal biases and be mad that they, for example, didn't credential for training camp, no, that was us. Right. But I'm just joking. But if he's bringing his biases in it, sure. But I don't think that anybody has any right to tell any radio commentator to be positive or negative. Don't listen to the show.
Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. I agree with that. I think, one example is you go back when RG3 was first drafted, and you know how the fan base was. I was part of that fan base. I was excited for RG3. I thought upside was there. The potential was great. Everything, And because of how the fans gravitated around him and kind of put him on his pedestal, that's where I believe the nickname he started was Super Bob. He called him Super Bob. And then any little mistake that he would make, he would air that out on the air all the time. He'd go, yeah, he had this play, did this, but it was always a but. It was always something. So it's like, dude, just talk about the moment here. You don't always have to go to that side. See, that's what's difference with you. You'll talk about those good moments, so forth, but you find the right times to bring in anything. If we talk about Snyder or the organization or whatever, That's the difference.
Well,
Right.
if this guy's so ugly like that, how is he still on the air?
Well, he's on a podcast now. He's not on the air.
So he's not on the air.
Yeah.
Well, he's a guest on Sheen's podcast. I think 1 day a week is what he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And does he write somewhere independently, or is he with a
I don't know.
major media
I don't think
outlet?
he's at the Times anymore. He used to be at the Times.
He does write. I can't remember what he writes for now, but he does it more of a part-time type of thing. Almost like what they call an op-ed, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, he was
Like
an
that.
opinion guy forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I sort of see both sides of it. If it were me, I might just leave well enough alone. That having been said, I have mocked Mike Florio relentlessly on the air and in writing and to him. But I just think you do it once and it's over. You don't go back and forth with somebody. And I especially agree with Alex wholeheartedly about this don't punch down thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's just a horrible idea.
That's something I remember. I think I heard it from a stand-up comedian when he was talking about some other comedian stole his material and was just some small-time guy and he had to let it go. But, it's that I've always applied that theory to like a lot of my life. Don't pick on people who are underneath you. Don't, just don't punch down.
And this is an attorney thing because many attorneys will blame their staff, which always annoys me. Oh, well, my secretary didn't file it and, there's a typo.
Right.
Just own it,
Right.
Don't blame them to the public. So, yeah, I mean, the idea in some celebrity, it's like, what are you doing arguing with some rando on Twitter?
Yeah. You see that a lot now with social media.
It's enjoyable, though, sometimes. But
as a third party? Yeah. As an observer?
Yes.
It's especially enjoyable if you see some celebrity or some, rich a-hole getting owned by just a random, 13-year-old on social media.
I can't take anymore. I mean, Alex knows, and Dave does too. I just can't take. I just think social media is the spawn of Satan, and it's just toxic. It's addictive. It definitely bad
is.
Attitudes, and I just don't like it, and I don't think it does much good for society.
I where it still has value in things like Nextdoor, where you can actually communicate with your neighbors about things going on in your neighborhood. But
you know what's funny about Nextdoor? I signed up for it and never look at it. The only time I got nominated to be a block captain or something, and I don't know why or who did it. So I'll get these reports. Oh, this post is so bad. I always vote to keep them, no matter what.
Well,
I don't care what it is. I'll vote to keep it. And all these people are arguing about the rules, this and that, and I'm just like, oh God, people, get a life.
Well, it's the same thing you and I had with our blog for a long time, where you and I were both are generally on the pro free speech side. So it's very hard for us to go in and say, no, you can't say this, because we even though we're very much different political ideologies, that free speech thing kind of trumps a lot of it for us.
And in terms of, by the way, I do want to address this because we have gotten some comments. One of my weekly visits to Twitter a few weeks ago, somebody was writing and saying, "Why is your comment section such a mess?"
Right.
This is the reason why it is. We try to control it. We technically have a no presidential politics limit on there.
Right.
Although we're not there to enforce it very much. I don't know what they're doing now. God knows what they're talking about.
You and I are basically off of there.
Yeah. But so the reason is that Alex and I are very, very pro free speech, and we're not going to, unless it really gets out of hand, you're starting to degrade people and sexual stuff. And, it's Biden versus Trump, that kind of, we'll crack down on that. But beyond that, we'd rather just let you guys talk.
Yeah.
Well, I know when it comes to social media, I take any advice of the great comedian George Carlin when I watched one of his shows on TV. It was not TV, on YouTube. But the fact that he has spoke that once you take yourself out of any political side, left or right, remove yourself and step back, and you just become an observer, everything that goes on around just becomes nothing but a clown show. You just enjoy everything. Every now and then you kind of just kind of drop a little dime or whatever to kind of flare up a little bit to start people, and that's what I do. I just sit back. I enjoy most of everything. I'll stir the pot a little bit, and I just enjoy everything. But it is toxic. I do agree.
Oh,
what's that?
Steve and I both do that. Used to do that all the time. Yeah. Yeah, and it also helps that we have thick skins, unlike some of the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some of these people are overly sensitive.
People have said horrible things to both of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
right.
to wrap that up,
Yeah.
I don't know, Tom, leave the guy alone. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Grow a thicker skin, Tom. You keep on bragging about being a New Yorker. New Yorkers are supposed to be tougher.
Now, is he overweight?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so he has a very thick skin already. Then it's just full of blubber.
oh, that's a low blow, man.
Yeah,
come at me, bro.
Deserved.
Come at me, bro.
It's
Come
well
on,
deserved.
Tom. We can stir up some trouble here. Maybe he'll tweet about us.
Yeah,
all right.
right.
I hate
We're
to do
right
it, guys,
about
but we do have to talk about last week's game and this coming game briefly.
Do we?
I actually almost feel like we should, make this as short as possible as part of the episode today. Last week was ugly. Let's just start there. That first half might be one of the worst first half of football we've ever seen from this team. I can think of a few games in recent memory. Obviously, the Monday Night Massacre is going to be in there for a lot of people. That game versus Kansas City where I think
the rain and
and like 10 people showed up. Yeah, that would be up there.
I mean, it was awful. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I watched this game live, which was stupid and a mistake. I kind of think for you fans out there, I would just throw this memory in the trash can, and because it seemed to me to be a bit of an anomaly. I don't think Washington is as bad as they showed, and I don't think Detroit is really as good as they showed. I just think it was just one of those weird moments in the universe where a whole bunch of really awful happens. I mean, look at all, especially defensively. I mean, how many blown coverages were there? How many mixed up coverages there were? Just terrible. And offense, I mean, they had 88 yards rushing, but Antonio Gibson, 14 for 28.
But that was through the whole game. They had 88.
Yeah, no, I know it was.
Yeah.
But
that first half, I think they only had 50 yards.
Yeah, I didn't track it like that.
Yeah, I know.
Like I used to.
And it's very hard to find that after the fact too,
that's why I did it. It's for that reason. But point is, I tend to think the whole thing was a bit more of an anomaly and not sort of what you can expect going forward. That was my kind of instant sense of it.
No, I hope you're right, because if it isn't an anomaly, this is going to be, hey, who we picking number one overall? If this becomes the norm, then Ron and everyone's getting fired and we are starting over, because that's going to be what the kind of season this will be. The thing that blew my mind with that offensive collapse in the first half was the thing that irritated me, really. They didn't adjust. Detroit was bringing a lot of pressure. Obviously, they're getting by the O-line very quickly. Yet, and I don't know if this is on Wentz or if this is on the coaching, it seems like they still were just trying to get deep shots in rather than, all right, this is what's happening, dink and dunk. Get the ball out quick, throw screen plays, do anything to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand fast. And they didn't make that adjustment at all. They didn't even make that in the second half. They just played better.
They looked totally discombobulated.
Yeah.
I think, to speak to your point, and that's exactly what I saw, and I think the problem is Scott Turner committed to those scripted plays. Didn't want to get away from the scripted plays, didn't adjust off the scripted plays, and this is what he wanted. He wanted to go for the jugular early and often, and he wanted to push the ball downfield. And the only problem with that is that Wentz is a rhythm quarterback. I'm granted, if he hits those couple passes, I mean, you never know. I mean, we probably be up 21-0 just like that, and you never know. But the problem is that when you're getting the rush that he's getting, no time to throw the ball, the plays can't develop because, like you said, they're constantly going downfield. It's just no adjustments. It's the only thing you're doing, you're creating a quarterback who is typically known for getting happy feet, making poor decisions when he gets that pressure. And once that happens, there's no real adjustment in his game on the fly that way. And he's always been known for that. You have to get him into a rhythm. You have to get him, comfortable in the pocket, which is what they did in the second half. The second half, they used a lot more misdirection. They used more shallow crossers and so forth. And once they were able to do that, they were able to keep the pressure off. I think of the 15 or 19, I think it's 19 blitzes total. I think like 10 or 12 of them were like in the first half, it seemed like, alone. And the second half, they couldn't do that as much. And they lost Okuda for a little while in the second half.
Well, Aiden Hutchinson went out.
Yeah, he went out.
He was
so they lost two of their.
He was killing Washington, Aiden Hutchinson.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So you had two of their biggest defensive players out. So it was like, and then there was nothing that they could do to adjust to what Washington was doing. And then we just started marching up and down the field at will.
Yeah. They really did make a good game of it in the second half.
Right.
Too much to overcome, obviously. The 22-point buffer they gave them there.
If they would have kept Swift from getting up off his butt to run in on that 3rd and 15, they might have had a chance.
I was strictly talking the offense. The defense is still
pretty
darn clueless.
So, yeah, offensively, some macro thoughts.
Sure.
I think the offensive line, if you go back even 2 years, the offensive line is a shadow of what this franchise used to have.
Mm-hmm.
Think about this. Trent Williams, one of the best in the NFL, bar none.
Maybe even the best at this point.
Certainly maybe top 3 or 4 by anyone's estimation. Brandon Scherf, same thing. By anyone's estimation, top 5, top 10. Some would argue higher than that. Chase Roullier is a quality center. And what do we have now? We don't have anything. What does Washington have now? An average left tackle, an average guard, and a center that's now going to be out 2 years with injuries. And so one of the things I think that Ron Rivera and his staff have done a very poor job of is they've rebuilt the offensive line, but they haven't done a good job in doing it. They've let elite talent walk,
and
they have not brought elite talent in. They drafted Sam Cosmi. Congratulations, he seems to be okay. He's just 1 of 4, and they're just kind of getting by with the rest of the line, and I think that really hurts because I've been fairly negative about the running game, but O.J. Simpson wouldn't do much, back there sometimes, So
they've gone from frequently having 2 to 3 elite linemen on that offensive line to now I would say everyone's average to above average, but that's it.
I think Chase Roullier is the only one that's above average. The rest
well, I'm not counting him because he's on IR again.
Yeah.
So.
So then the other macro point is it's early, but I think they do have a fairly quality receiving core.
Oh, yes.
Jahan Doctson seems to be the real thing. We know Terry McLaurin. So they've got 2 guys who, if you're a fan of this team, I think you can say we have a decent shot at having 2 10-year players in the room. And then you throw in guys like Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel seems to be as advertised since he's now healthy. And Carson Wentz, I was just looking at all NFL passing stats. Carson Wentz is in the top 5 in almost every stat.
Yeah.
So far, it's early, 2 games. But Carson Wentz, and he's mixed the ball up. He's mixed them. He's spreading it around. Yeah. So I think they do have a decent quarterback, and I think what's really killing this team offensively is the offensive line play.
I think line play is for sure. A lot of people are pointing at the running game, but that if that's more of a symptom of the line, it's hard to tell.
It's a
almost
symptom of Antonio Gibson not being a very good running back is the other thing.
They were using him the way they need to last week, and they didn't. I felt like they couldn't this week. They never got because they obviously didn't get in rhythm with it.
Yeah.
Where he and J.D. McKissick are basically the same guy. They need to be catching the ball as much as they're running it to be effective. And now hopefully, and we heard that Brian Robinson's already practicing. Hopefully, when he comes back, he can take a bulk of the running plays. And
he looks like a traditional running back,
right? Right, and we did want to talk about the fact that Robinson, after being shot, is already practicing again, which is to me insane that he would be out there running, these drills and all that. Like he's doing stuff that nobody who was shot in the knee should be doing already, in my mind. I'm sure the doctors are saying it's okay, but
I have been around some folks that have suffered wounds in combat and in terrorist attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And for most of these guys, it's a mental challenge more than it is a physical challenge. It takes guys who are in that situation a long time to get mentally right.
Mm-hmm.
And it more so than the physical. So my guess with Robinson is that him being out there with his teammates, doing what he knows best, even if it's just a little bit and on the side or whatever you guys say he was doing, is probably mental therapy for him, because he's not going to be able, until he gets past it in his head, I got shot by bad guys and I survived. There's a PTSD that goes along with that.
Sure.
And it's not like Rambo in the movies where you can just brush it off. That's not reality. And so for him, my guess is that him being out there doing anything at all, some semblance of normalcy, is probably helping him mentally, because that's what I've seen is by far the biggest challenge when it comes to people who have been shot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know many who, like, I know people who had it happen after the fact. I'm not close with, but I know Bob Woodruff, who was blown up in Iraq, famously, the news anchor. We summer in the same area, so I've met him quite a few times.
Summer in the same area, you snob.
Yes. Where I have my cabin, they have a cabin. That's all.
Us military folk don't have vacation cabins.
Yes,
Alex.
I know. Us people who come from multiple generations of middle class do, because property was cheap 100 years ago.
Listen to him defend his rich guy vacation cabin.
My 3-bedroom cabin that I inherited. Yes. But like, I know with him, he got blown up. It took him a long time to come back from that, because there was I don't want to say brain damage, because that's not right, but it definitely was psychological.
It is. It's because, again, it's PTSD.
Absolutely.
In some form and at some level. And I just think what Dave and Alex saw is probably more mental therapy than anything else for Robinson.
Yeah. I mean, and it's great that he is working out. He was making some, what's the drill they do where they like run through the ladder, and you know what I'm talking about? That running drill.
Yes.
Yeah, he was doing some of that already, which that's what blew my mind. I was like, how are you doing that with your knee is still all messed up?
But to be honest, it sounded like he just suffered soft tissue wounds.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, with the report we talked about, 3 weeks ago, was that the shell went completely through his knee and didn't hit anything.
Right.
He didn't touch anything, no.
Yeah.
Which is a miracle.
Yes, it is. Because, half an inch one way or the other, he probably is never playing again.
Yeah, that's right. It would have blown his knee up.
Yep.
So anyway, certainly our best wishes to Brian Robinson. Hopefully he's mentally there and all of that. And
hopefully he's back soon. If
absolutely.
he comes back, fantastic.
His team needs him.
Yeah.
But so that's often so it's just, I think it's really more of a core issue that's not going to be solved, and it's going to get worse, because we did see that Washington signed Nick Wright to be a backup center, and I guess probably Wes Schweitzer looks like he's going to be the starting center going forward, I would assume. And that's, none of that is positive. So I don't think it's going to get much better. And listen, folks, I mean, it only gets harder from here.
I just think to kind of expound more on the offensive line, and I'm by no means no expert on it, but I think the second half kind of really what's that?
You can pretend to be one.
That's true. That is true. But I think the second half kind of proved on how you protected deficiencies on that offensive line when they did a lot of misdirections. They kept everything quick underneath. 3-step drops, get the ball out, find your read, go through 1, 2, 3 in your progressions and so forth. And you don't allow this offensive line or put this offensive line in a position to where they got to hold a block for more than 2 or 3 seconds. Let's be honest. You're talking about 2 guards over the last 2 years, I believe, have been rated. Not even a top 20 in their position. At least I know Norwell was like that last year. He was ranked on the back end of most of the guards in the league last year. Didn't have that great of a year last year, but I think that second half, and I'm hoping that Scott Turner kind of realized what he did in the first half and the adjustments he made going in the second half. That second half game plan is something that you at least have got to start the game with. Get the defenses back on their heels, get them guessing on what you're going to do. Then you can start doing more plays downfield that takes more time to develop, because now you kind of got a defense kind of guessing on what you're doing. And so that's what you have to do to protect that offensive line. That's just what I see anyway.
The problem, of course, being Scott Turner is also not known for, making those adjustments to his larger plan.
Right.
Was it Steve Smith who was pretty outspoken and critical about Scott Turner's inability to do anything
but off a lot. Steve Smith did.
Can't do anything that his dad wasn't doing, basically, is how I think it kind of got summed up.
I admired Steve Smith because he had no filter.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which is a quality I admire out of anybody.
He makes your no filter look like you have a filter.
And I don't have a filter. I mean, we've proven that.
I'm with you, Dave. I think they need to realize that this line is not gonna hold for 5 seconds. This is still a short to medium passing game kind of line. And you got to adjust. You got to adjust your players.
The problem is, at some point, defense is key in on that as well, particularly if you don't have a running game at all. Right. If you don't have a running back who's not a threat at all, and they don't have one right now, absent Brian Robinson. And listen, Brian Robinson might not be able to play either. I mean, injury aside, we haven't seen him in any more than a couple preseason games.
Sure.
Right.
So it's a huge question mark. But without a running threat, and you just can't go downfield, what happens? Well, your defenses cram forward, they flood zones, and it becomes a bigger problem. So I do think it's a lot. Dave's right. What Dave is saying is correct, but I don't know how good of a plan that is on a long-term basis.
Yeah.
It's the only answer, but whether it works on a long-term basis is another question. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, hopefully if you do that successfully enough and teams defenses do adjust, it opens something else up for you. That's all you can hope for. All right. I don't know if there's anything else you guys really want to discuss from the last game other than
defense.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, my God, was the secondary terrible, specifically the corners.
Yeah.
I mean, William Jackson and Kendall Fuller are only on the field because they're making a lot of money and because there's no other option.
Right.
Those two guys, how many mixed up coverages, busted coverages do we see? And I'm sorry, and Dave, and I think you and I are probably disagree on this because, I mean, I know what you wrote in your column. I blame the players for this. This scheme is not like nuclear fission. It's nothing. It's not a surprise. It's not some scheme that NFL players who've been doing it for years don't already know. You can't tell me that it takes Jack Del Rio to explain to them how to cover a bunch formation. They really ought to know that. And I think it's way more on just the talent and the attention to detail spent by the players more than anything else. That's my view. So I don't tend to blame Jack Del Rio for what we saw, because at the end of the day, the players are playing on the field.
I just think the perspective. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, because I do agree what you said on that.
Feel free to say I'm wrong, Dave. It's okay.
But it's just, I continue to watch, players being put in positions that are not their strength. You still see William Jackson III lining up off the ball by 8-9 yards. That's not his strength. I saw on 3 different occasions, twice was Jamin Davis going out and covering the slot receiver, lining heads up on him. And then you had Holcomb that did the exact same thing on that one play actually it might have been Mayo, actually.
It was Mayo.
Yeah.
It's like
Mayo was clueless out there.
Oh, he was horrible.
Yeah.
And it's just it's not a schematically good idea to ever have your defense in a position of where your linebacker is going out and lining up on the slot receiver. It just doesn't work. And I don't know if it's because they don't have the personnel, or if the Lions saw a mismatch somewhere and they motioned out to that, or whatever it is, whatever that situation was. but I see it way too often. I mean, even Ron Rivera made mention to it last week about the fact that we can't allow our linebackers to get isolated on their receivers and running backs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened this week? They were isolated on their receivers and running backs again. And then when it comes to the bunch formations, I get that they still should not have issues with that as the player. But if you're continuously still having struggles with that formation every time, you got to still look at coaching. Maybe it's not the scheme.
Is this a high school team? This isn't like me out there. These are experienced pros. Bunch formations are not new. What is Jack Del Rio going to tell them that they haven't heard before? On something that basic. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I think it's a fundamental difference in a philosophy of how you and I are looking at the game. Because I've always tended to blame the players for this stuff.
I mean, I blame players for a lack of communication still in these, especially when you see a bunch formation, your corners need to be talking who's got what, and if you're playing, all right, are we playing zone? All right, stay in your zones. Don't get baited into following a guy just because, it's bunch formation and you think XYZ player is going to be the target.
Well, the other thing is also, who's going to replace Jack Del Rio in week 3? Somebody tell me. You're not advocating for him to be fired now, Dave. Don't misunderstand me. But, no. I mean, as some people in our comment section were, what do you think's going to happen? Is some Hall of Famer going to roll into Washington, D.C. week 3?
No, of course
not.
You're
stuck with him for the bulk of the year.
I don't know who on the coaching staff would be the perfect candidate, if anybody.
Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, Ron would have to take over that play calling duty himself as a former defensive coordinator. That's your best option. And I don't know if that's the best option because he's the head coach. He's got other things to do.
What are your thoughts on Chris Harris? I don't know if he would ever translate into that at all, but.
Well, I know there was some talk about him doing that.
He might be the next, if, Jack Del Rio, got beamed up to Mars, he might be the one to fill in, sure. But is he worth it? Is it going to be an improvement?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, right?
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I also think for a lot of fans, it's easy to blame the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Because the players are our idols, right? When you're a fan, you're really watching the players. Because sure. you when you were a kid, you think of yourself on the field. We all did, And I mean, some of us turned down that career path for a lucrative job, doing real estate. But I mean, that's another matter. But point is, I think fans just generally they're more apt to blame coaches.
Sure.
And you have an analysis. I'm not talking about you because you've gone through an objective analysis of it, but just people kind of generally going mouth on off, going, well, it's the coach, it's
right.
Your coach. Well, it's because you idolize the players. It's hard to blame players sometimes.
I think probably my biggest frustration though is the fact that you have two former really good to great linebackers that come into the season saying we're real comfortable with what we have, and It was very clear that. I mean, it's like you said, Steve, about Holcomb. He's a jag. That's what he is. That's all he is. Jamin Davis, he could wind up being a great linebacker down the road, but he's not that right now.
No, he won't.
No, well, that's true. I get that, but still, the possibility might still be there.
You're 100% right about that. Roster.
But then after that, what do you have? You have nothing after that.
Yeah.
What, David Mayo? Seriously?
Disaster.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the real issue with if you bring whoever comes in. There, I don't see a scheme that makes this roster work perfectly.
The players aren't any good. Some of them.
Yeah, and even like if you say, all right, these are our best 11 guys, and whoever you want to pick, I don't know how you make them all work together and make it flow, because there's certain basics in NFL defensive schemes that you have to do. And, like the classic thing being umbrella coverage, I don't know why that has like fallen out of favor with NFL coaches so much that they like seem to not want to just put, all your defensive corners in a classic, scheme that works like that ever. They want to get fancy and they want to have safeties lined up on the line of scrimmage instead of, back there where they can do some coverage. But
well, I think part of it, these coaches sort of outsmart themselves and stuff.
Right.
A little bit. But here's the other thing. To me, watching this team for 2 weeks now, it's not just the corners and it's not just the linebackers. Everything you guys said 100% right, but I think their defensive front is overrated. I know they spent a lot of draft picks on the defensive front, and John Allen, leader, all that, don't deny that. But look, DeAndre Swift averaged 11 yards per carry.
They don't play well as a unit.
Last week, the Jacksonville guy, help me, Robinson, about the same. A lot. And Travis Etienne, same thing. And
Etienne
we saw this time.
Him up, yeah.
Yeah, and we saw this a lot last year too. And when you have a truckload of first-round draft picks up there, you should expect more. But they just don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I go back to early in the year in the offseason, I believe it was I want to say it was Jamal that was talking about this, but it might have been you, Steve, the fact that when they let Tim Settle go, they let go a guy that, one, they could have afforded to resign pretty easily from the contract he signed, but they let go of their one real true run stuffing defensive tackle that was able to push the pocket back, which made a ton of sense. I mean, I agreed with that when I heard that. And that's what they let walk out the door. I love Deron Payne. I love what he brings to the game, sure, but I mean, they're probably never going to keep him after this year. He's going to demand too much money, and for what the job that Settle did to put him next to Johnathan Allen, and for what he does, and then once the defensive ends were healthy, I think that's a more cohesive unit. I think they're better in terms against the run with Settle in there than they are with Deron Payne.
Sure. And I think their hope was that Mathis would kind of do that because he's supposed to be a good run stopper, but now he's going to be injured for the year. So we don't know.
That's just bad luck.
That is. Sure. Injuries you never want injuries, obviously, but you can never, they're just bad luck, like you said.
Tim Settle signed a 2-year, $9 million contract,
Mm-hmm.
$4.05 million signing bonus, $7 million guaranteed. So his cap hit this year is $2.675 million, and then $4.96 million next year. So it's a lot, but
it doesn't break the bank.
No. They could have made it work.
Yeah. No, and that is frustrating.
So I just think collectively the defense is a mess. What they showed against Detroit is that this defense is a mess. And it's probably truthfully some of everything. We already talked about roster construction.
Right.
The coaches, I'm not saying Jack Del Rio is doing a good job. He probably isn't. I just tend to blame the players more, but everybody's kind of at fault. The players are underperforming. The scheme's probably bad. The coaches' tragedy in roster building. There's just a lot of things. And we've seen that sort of 2 weeks in a row. And because newsflash, Washington should have lost the Jacksonville game. If Jacksonville hadn't stunk up the joint a few times on their own, they would have been 0-2, not 1-1.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the next week's game. The Sunday versus the Eagles. I assume we're all just going to say they got their butts kicked, or they're going to get their butts kicked. Because
that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm going to say.
Yeah. The Eagles looked really good on Monday night.
They pounded the Minnesota Vikings. For those of you who didn't watch it.
Yeah.
I stopped watching after the first half. It was.
Yeah, kind of me too.
Do you have the numbers from that game up, Steve? I know I don't. We don't always do that, but I think
I have some of it. Yeah, give me 1 second.
Kirk Cousins had like a 50 QBR rating or something like that. It was terrible.
Now I will say that might be the one thing you take away from that game. I tried to talk to some of the guys here because I work at Philly. The fact that you guys still win again. Now I still think they win the game even if it played on Sunday at 1:00. But a Kirk Cousins on prime time, we've watched time and time again just turn up goose egg after goose egg
That's
after goose
true.
egg. He has always been terrible. I mean, because we all remember the game against the Giants. The Giants were completely done. They were even playing. Like, they didn't even want to be there. And
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins had like 2 interceptions in that game.
Yeah.
Had a final drive, and he wound up throwing an interception on that final drive
Mm-hmm.
against a team that clearly didn't even want to play that day.
Yeah.
But it was on what, Thursday night? I think that game was on or something like that. It was a prime time.
You're talking about the
night.
final game of the season, right? That or his final game here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's. I mean, I still think Philly would have beaten Minnesota. I think they had no answer for Jalen Hurts and so forth. I get that, but I think it still would have been a bit of a different game because there's no way, for as good as Darius Slay is,
right?
I'm sorry, but Justin Jefferson would have done more on a Sunday afternoon. You say I'm wrong, say that's his opinion, which it is, and me making an assumption, which I'm sure I am. That's fine. But I just think it would have been a different dynamic on a different day. But
listen, Darius Slay shut down Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. Oh, he's a beast. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a beast. Sure. But so is Justin Jefferson, though.
Yeah. So the numbers, because
he's arguably the best receiver in football right now.
Certainly.
Arguably.
Yeah.
Up there.
So the numbers, because Alex asked for them. Kirk Cousins was 27 for 46 or 221 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 51.1.
51.1. That's what it was.
In contrast, Jalen Hurts, 26 for 31, 333 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 108, and he rushed for 57 yards and 11 attempts.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders was the leading rusher, 17 for 80. And then from a receiving standpoint, it was Dallas Goedert who led the way with 5 receptions, 82 yards, but Devontae Smith had 7 for 80. So the two of those guys. And then A.J. Brown was 5 for 69. Quez Watkins was 2 for 69. Look, I mean, the Eagles have a ton of weapons.
They do.
But to me, that's not – if Washington wants to win, they can't get too wrapped up about that. So, number one, they need to start strong. You know, a game like Detroit where it's just a total disaster, you know, mistakes and all of that, if they can just play mistake-free football and stay in a game for a while against a highly talented team, that's job one, because if they don't, it's over. The second thing to me, second key, Washington's secretary needs to not act like a bad high school team. I'm talking about what we just talked about. William Jackson, Kendall Fuller, Benjamin St. Juste, those guys have got to do their jobs and do them well, otherwise it's over. And then the other thing is, what type of quarterback has consistently hurt Washington for years and years and years? Running quarterbacks. Quarterbacks who can move. That is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is not that great of a passer, but he can move. And so I think those three things are what would be important for Washington to win the game. Start strong, mistake-free. Even if they're down in points, start strong, look like an NFL team. The secondary's got to get their act together and then can keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket. Those would be my keys to the game.
Yeah. The only – I mean, obviously I think, you know, those are pretty much dead on. The only thing I can think of that I would do with Jalen Hurts, given how Davis has struggled in everything else, all I'm telling him to do all game is just spy Jalen Hurts. I don't want you to go into coverage. I don't want you to, you know, do anything but just spy this quarterback who can run. Because there's one thing Davis has, and that's he's got decent speed for a linebacker. So just, you know, if you see him running out of the pocket, go get him. Other than that, just hang out in the middle of the field.
Just hang out.
Yeah.
That'll go well.
Yeah.
I know, but when it comes to Jalen Hurts, though, I will say from last year to this year, I think his accuracy and his anticipation on his balls has improved this year. He's still not a great passer, I get that, but with what he does with his legs and how, because he's been out of the pocket multiple times, he was able to really kind of get much better throws off platform downfield than he was last year. And that could be a problem for our secondary right there, of course. But I think in this game we should probably utilize a little more Johnathan Williams against that defensive line, because the Eagles have not been great on defending the run so far this year. And I love Antonio Gibson. I mean, I think he's got a lot of upside as a weapon out of the backfield, as I said before. Especially mainly in the passing game. But we got to be able to pound this ball. We got to be able to dictate this game inside the trenches one way or another. And I think the Eagles right now, they're vulnerable against the run. They certainly aren't against the pass, that's for sure. But we have got to be able to give Wentz and his receivers an opportunity in this game. And the only way that's going to happen is if we run the ball effectively. And that's not right now. It's not going to happen without Antonio Gibson. I actually think Jonathan Williams should have some sort of a role early in this game to establish something. Will that happen? Unlikely. That probably won't.
Ron Rivera's a pretty stubborn guy.
Yeah, I've noticed that. We had to give Wentz and that offensive line a chance. A chance, because those receivers, they're going to be put to work. They're going to be put to test all game long. With Bradbury on one side, you got Darius Slay on the other, and the safety Gardner going deep. I mean, you're not going to have many opportunities going deep. So you have to create those opportunities. And the only way you're going to create those opportunities is through the run game. And that's why I really don't see anything positive coming out of this game coming up. It's
a tough one. And I'd also like to point out
it's a very tough one.
That now Philadelphia has Fletcher Cox going against some dude at center in the interior offensive line. That's like, things sure to go wrong. Isn't that a Saturday Night Live skit? Things sure to go wrong.
I was trying not to think about that.
Yeah, that one's a big key matchup right there. Fletcher Cox against
I was trying not to, Steve.
Hey, it's my job to make you think.
I doubt that Washington will be lining up under center very much in this game. It's going to be a lot of shotgun. Which I know the NFL is becoming that anyway. Teams seem to be in shotgun 80% of the time now.
I just don't think any of this offensive line is going to do well against the Eagles defense. It's going to be a tough game all around.
No,
I think
agree.
you guys had it right though. It's got to be a solid run game, quick tempoed short passing game. That's our only hope.
Yeah. So, do we want to put scores on this thing, or are we all just saying ass is kicked?
Oh no. We gotta own a score prediction.
All right. I want to get this out of the way. 35-17 Eagles beat us.
Dave.
38-25.
I'm gonna go contrary to my nature. I think Washington was a bit embarrassed by what they showed last week. And I think in these NFC East games sometimes have a way of either being total blowouts or really close, hard-fought games. So I think this one will actually be a bit closer. So I'm going to say something like, 32-24 Eagles.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a total disaster.
Okay.
For a second there, I thought you were leaning towards a win on Washington right there.
No.
He's not. Steve doesn't drink, Dave. So,
by the way, I saw in my weekly visit to Twitter, which was this morning because I was preparing for the show, and apparently the bunch of fans from the City of Hate up there are like threatening to take over FedEx Field. Did you guys see this?
I mean, they always do. That's not news.
Okay, maybe not, but it had a photo of some billboard about Carson Wentz up in the Philadelphia area, so. I don't know. It's the crazy people up at the City of Hate.
The last thing we want to talk about, we're 2 weeks into the NFL. Steve, what are some big surprises that you've seen in the league this year? If Dave comes back, we'll ask him as well. But yeah. What are your surprises or things that maybe generally people weren't expecting? Maybe you were, things like that.
Well, first of all, I don't think there have been a ton of surprises in the NFL yet so far this year. So there aren't a ton of them. This is going to seem a bit obvious, but for me, it wasn't. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are far better than I gave them credit for.
Mm.
They are 2-0. I kind of viewed Buffalo as a bit of a lucky team to go as far as they did in the playoffs last year. And I still don't think Josh Allen is the greatest passer in the world. But, I mean, look, they beat the Rams. They beat the Titans. Two quality teams there. And Josh Allen has got a 75% completion percentage.
Yeah.
So that's way better than what I thought. So I think that would be one for me.
Okay. So I'll give you one of mine, and then if Dave's back, we'll have Dave. So the first one to me, it just irritates me again as a Washington fan, just how well the Miami Dolphins are doing under their new head coach, who's yet another guy, McDaniels. Mike McDaniels, just another guy from that Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur coaching staff we had here for, he was here for 3 years. Just another guy who's now looking like a superstar head coach, looking like a genius. He's got Tua, who was, I think we all were kind of saying was going to be a bust. Now he's leading the league at least 2 weeks in.
2 weeks in. I mean, give
Sure.
it time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good one. What can you say? I mean, Washington seems to have a habit of producing outstanding players and coaches, not in Washington.
Yes, they go on to do great things. I'll give you another. This is one that I saw coming. I'm pretty sure you probably saw it coming too, Steve. What was Indy thinking with Matt Ryan? I mean, he's had 1 touchdown so far, and I think, what is it, 5, 6 interceptions? It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, I told you last week that I think Jim Irsay is a bit of a lunatic.
Yeah.
So what were they thinking? It's, what drug did Jim Irsay snort?
Yeah.
I do think Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's old, man.
Yeah.
Old. I know he hasn't done well. It probably wasn't going to go out. And listen, I mean, quarterbacks tend to not do as well when they've been in one place a long time and they move at the end of their career. It normally doesn't go well, and this is what's happening in Indy, so it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, okay, Peyton Manning kind of did it, although he was shot that year in Denver, that final year. And then the other, Favre had 2 good years in New York, technically.
Favre, and also Favre is an all-time NFL great too.
So is Peyton Manning. Yeah, they're also 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
But Peyton faded tremendously in Denver, and he won a Super Bowl, but it was because of other things.
Right. He won a Super Bowl not being able to throw past 5 yards.
Things went badly for Peyton when his wife was receiving boxes of steroids at their home.
Yes, that's also true. All right, Dave, it looks like you're back.
Yes.
What are your surprises this season?
My surprises this season, actually, I got to go with the Raiders. I really thought that they were not going to start off 0-2 like they were. I thought they really had they didn't have the greatest of defenses going into the year. I get that, but there's weapons around Carr. Carr has always been kind of flirting with that top 7, 8, 9 type quarterback in the league. He was always floating around there, and then I really thought that this was going to be the year where he'd take that next step, and then, I mean, I actually thought that the Raiders were going to be a serious challenge for that division. They still very well could be.
It's early.
But it's just the way they started. I'm surprised. Like, Waller's been kind of non-existent. Devontae Adams had 1 really good game and then 1 not so Devontae Adams type game. And he still can't figure out how to use Josh Jacobs appropriately. I don't understand that at all. So, but that would have to be my.
That was your big one. That's a good one. I think the Raiders are a pretty good example of what happens when you have a nut job as an owner. because the Raiders have gone through countless coaches and weird players, and they focus on dudes who can, they've drafted a bunch of speed receivers who can't actually receive, and a bunch of things. And it's kind of like Washington. They've got this disaster train wreck as an owner. Well, so do the Raiders, and the teams that are good for a long time consistently, the Steelers, who are having a bit of a down year this year, but for the most part, and others, they have a solid ownership structure, competent ownership, decent good front office, and the Raiders have always just lacked that because they've got a psycho, the son of Sam, up there as the owner.
Yeah.
Son of Sam being a reference to a serial killer, but I am not saying he was a killer, but you get my point.
I mean, his barber was.
Yeah, but I would still take him over Snyder, though.
Oh, yes.
I think that, in all dead seriousness, Snyder might be the biggest train wreck in the NFL.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Well, there's other train wrecks. There's other train wrecks, but not just like in every conceivable way train wreck.
Right. Now, Steve, you're a big Game of Thrones guy. Do you remember that? What was the quote that Tyrion has to Joffrey when we've had stupid kings and we've had violent kings, but we've never had a stupid violent king or something like. Yeah, that's Dan Snyder.
Dan Snyder is Joffrey from Game of Thrones. Maybe there's your title.
There we go. That's not bad.
Yeah, but I think Joffrey was taller than Dan now. That's the only thing.
Everybody's taller than Dan.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, Alex, I did watch House of the Dragon.
Yeah. We talked about it briefly.
Oh, did we? Okay. Yeah, I can't remember if it was on the air or what.
It's starting to look. It's getting good. Finally,
it was a bit slow in the beginning.
Well, they always take forever to set up these shows, and now they're going to do a time jump, though. I don't know if you know that.
I do know that.
10 years.
Yeah,
10 years. Yep.
And
they're heading into what they call the Dance of the Dragon.
Yeah, basically.
I haven't read the book, so I'm new on this one. I haven't read this book yet.
The House of the Dragons, if you read the book, it's a lot of civil wars between the Targaryen family. And I mean, more often than not, it ends up being every time a king dies, there's a civil war between
it's kind of like the War of the Roses for centuries.
Game of Thrones is the War of the Roses technically. This is more, hey, your brother cousin and my brother cousin both have a right to the throne because of incest, yay. So now they're gonna kill each other with dragons.
Right.
There's a lot of that.
I think Dan Snyder would happily kill people with dragons if he had one.
I'm sure he would. You never want to give anyone like Dan Snyder a dragon. Give someone like me a dragon. I'm altruistic.
Write that down. Somebody remember to make that a point.
Yes. One last funny story.
Please don't give Dan Snyder a dragon.
Yes. Not even a little one, because he's very small. So one random little story I saw just before I was, I did my classic, did I miss any NFL news search before the show? Did you guys see this thing that Bruce Arians got in trouble with the league because he was down on the sidelines during the game last week?
No.
No, I did not.
Yeah, since he's not the coach anymore, he's not supposed to be down there. But the reason he was down there is they were at New Orleans, and New Orleans didn't have a box for the front office people for Tampa to be.
What?
Yeah. They told him we can get you a seat in the press box. And so Bruce Arians decided he'd just go hang out on the sidelines. And I guess they're mad at him because he was talking to players.
What kind of third-rate operation is that? Sorry, we don't have a booth for you.
Right. I can't
only the
imagine
New Orleans
this
Superdome.
Is new. That, a few people from the front office might come along, like the owner. Don't most owners go to the away games? I'd imagine so.
Yeah, so the owners do, and there's always an owner's box that they put the owners in.
Right.
A visiting owner box, what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah. a visiting owner box. But I think the front office people would also have a box at every.
There's always an opposing coach's booth up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just very weird that like, oh, we don't have room for you, Bruce. You know, like
So come
I
down
feel like
to
they
the
did it on
sidelines.
purpose.
Oh yeah, now you're gonna get in trouble. What they do? Fine him or what?
I think he got a stern warning in the letter.
Stern talking to.
And if you get enough warnings, then you get a demerit. And if you get enough demerits,
and eventually you're gonna go have to see your guidance counselor.
Right. Exactly. I'm stealing jokes from The Office. That's the kind of day it is. Yeah, but I just saw that story and I was like, how do you not have space for the front office guys?
That's amazing.
Come on. Yeah.
It's not like it's a new stadium. This game was in New Orleans. I mean, it was the Superdome.
Right.
That's
not
amazing.
so super. And
No.
Is it now? Is it still the Superdome or is it in the Mercedes-Benz Dome or something? They've changed the name.
That's the one. No, I think Mercedes-Benz is in Atlanta.
No, they have two stadiums. Mercedes.
Do they?
Yep.
I don't know then.
Really?
That's the thing.
You know that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that they're both called the Mercedes-Benz Dome. It's very weird.
Now you're gonna bug me.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so
gonna bug
we're both
Steve.
right.
Who?
It's the Mercedes Superdome.
Oh, it's the Mercedes Superdome, and then the Atlanta one is just the Mercedes-Benz Dome or whatever.
Actually, no, hold on, I'm wrong. It's the Caesars Superdome.
Oh, it's the Caesar Superdome now.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the Caesars Superdome, meaning Caesar's Palace, I guess.
Okay. Not Caesar's Pizza, who's the official sponsor of the NFL.
Well, Little Caesars, that might be an appropriate Dan Snyder reference. Little Caesars Pizza. Pizza.
By the way, I know it's all about money, but can we just admit, like, Little Caesars being the official pizza of the NFL is kind of sad now? Like,
I was surprised. I'm like, how does that happen?
Yeah, how do they have money?
I know how it
for
happened.
this?
They paid the NFL the most money. That's how it happened.
But how did they have the most money? They're like the fifth most popular pizza chain. You would think
the fifth most popular pizza chain makes a lot of money.
Yeah. Not as much as the first and the second and the third and the fourth.
No, but they got mad at Papa John's.
I understand. Yeah, okay, I get that, but I would have thought they would have
out.
gone back to Domino's, who's got more money than anybody.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We've gone well off the rails at this point.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Any other topics? Anything we didn't cover?
Probably, and I'll regret it later. But
we didn't do game balls. But
game balls.
Deflated game balls this week.
DeAndre Swift gets a game ball from me.
Okay.
And on defense, I don't know. John Allen by default, he didn't look terrible.
Okay.
DeAndre Swift and I will.
Didn't John Allen get hurt like halfway through the game? That's why he didn't look terrible. He wasn't there.
Maybe that's it. So yeah, it's certainly a deflated game ball. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it's deflated game balls because they lost.
How did Tom Brady get into this?
Yeah. Well, that's where we started it, when we started doing this bit 5 years ago.
Right. So.
Do you have game balls there, Dave, or?
Me, let's see. I will give it to I'll stick to Steve's team here. I'll go Amon-Ra St. Brown. There you go.
Okay.
Detroit on that side right there.
That was who I meant to go with. You got if you're going to write this down, Alex, I meant to go.
Do I have to write these down? I mean, I'm not tracking it anymore.
Okay, well then don't. But I was meaning to say Amon-Ra St. Brown, not DeAndre Swift. So.
Okay. All right.
And let's see on the defensive side of the ball.
That's
wow,
tough.
That is tough. Let me give it to. I don't know. I had no clue. I'll give it to.
Listen, there's defenders.
I'll give it to Forrest. Huh?
There's defenders on the opposing team that deserve game balls. Right. Feel free.
Well, I'll give it to Forrest because at least he was honest this week after the game and saying it was almost like the opposing team knew exactly what we were doing and team we were in and everything else on top
Fair
of that.
enough.
So I'll give it to Forrest. There you go.
Okay. You'd think with going last, I'd have time to think of a good one, but this game was just so bad. I'm gonna give the the defensive game ball. Let me do that one first, and I guess I'll just go with. I'll agree with Dave. Forrest. I think he's the only one who didn't, totally S the bed. So I'll give it to him. Offense, bit harder. I'm not going to do the bit where going to the other team, but I'll go Doctson. This is 2 weeks in a row that the rookie's kind of shown up, and all right, he's not lighting the world on fire, but I'm impressed so far by everything we're seeing from him. So that's I guess where I'll go with.
We've never had this much trouble coming up with game balls.
No, which is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. It wasn't a pretty game. So there's your game balls, folks. All right.
If you don't mind, I want to just quick kind of go back real quick.
All right.
Because after I dropped out, I just wanted to share that the one thing that's funny this week during, with me at work up here, like maybe 5-7 years ago, these guys would get me riled up for Philly week, Philly Washington week, so forth. But
right now they're doing a mental health check. Is that what's going on?
And that's pretty much what they're trying to lean towards, because it's like, it's just like, I'm like, where are you at here, Dave? I mean, it's like, do you not care about the game or what? What's going on? I'm like, if you understood the road I've taken under this owner, and with the scandals recently, now the name change and everything, and how I've separated Redskins Commanders and stuff, it's just, passion is not there. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah.
It's like I'm rooting for an expansion team. If they took the burgundy and gold colors away, I'd probably just be an NFL fan, and that's it, done. I mean, that's it. That's just where I'm at.
Well,
and
they kind of have taken the colors away. I mean, they look like Atlanta, like the bastard stepchild of Atlanta Falcons.
Now they're wearing
and
cranberry and black.
In fact, that's another thing I was talking to, because I work with a buddy of mine that he likes the Steelers too as well, and I told him, it's like, well, when we wear our black unis, you'll see us copy the Steelers. It's black and gold is what we have. You would figure they would at least go with like the burgundy numbers and the gold trim, but they're not even doing that.
No.
It's the gold numbers. And you have the burgundy gold, you have the burgundy trim on it, but it's so thin you can barely see it.
Well, Dave, what I think we can all safely root for is pain and agony and misery to the people of Philadelphia.
Except for the fine people who make all the good cheesesteaks, yes.
Yeah.
I can't eat those anymore, though, so that's,
You can't even do a chicken cheesesteak, really, can you?
No.
That's awful.
That's a shame.
Yeah, that's awful.
Okay, cheesesteaks are pretty good.
Oh, they're good.
You know what's really good? A cheesesteak egg roll. Now we're going to get way off topic.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah. All right, guys, that should wrap us up this week. We will be back next Thursday for you guys, because you're not listening to this at like midnight if I post it tonight. So next Thursday,
hell or high water,
yes,
we will be back.
Right. And happy! I think it's Rosh Hashanah. I don't even know which holiday.
Is it? I think it's something coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
Jewish,
definitely. Yeah. Yes. Happy holiday something to all my fellow Jews out there.
Happy something.
Yes. Happy whichever one this is. Later.